exciting and really dangerous at some level we weren't sure about.
It was a tough going getting the picture made and finished.
They told us, you know, that we have to stop working on this movie, and it never ever happened to me before.
So I knew that money was coming in cash and paper bags and, you know, like crazy stuff.
Oh, and he had to go to the hospital. And I thought, oh, I hope his arm's not broken. Thank God his arm wasn't broken.
One was killed and the other went to prison, I think.
I said, well, hang on, what's going on here?
Well, my reaction to the book Winter Kills was that it was scary, first of all. Condon was a visionary, and he had his finger on the pulse of certain kind of really powerful, greedy men. At that time, I was, like everybody else, totally enamored with my President Kennedy, you know, and here with implications that, subtle as they were, that he was a womanizer and that his father bought him the presidency and that they were involved in offshore conspiracies and Cuban nightmare sort of agendas with the mob. Part of the book was just about how this president was groomed by his father to take office, how deals were made and that kind of crooked stuff that went on. It said a lot of things about powerful people in code, but the code was identifiable by anyone. Nobody wanted to touch it in Hollywood. It had to almost be financed by gangsters, by outsiders, which it was. Lenny Goldberg and Robert Sterling had this company called Sterling Gold, and they released the Emmanuel pictures, and their biggest one, I think, was called Black Emmanuel, and they made a lot of money. So then they wanted to go into another direction. They basically wanted to become real producers, you know, producers of quality stuff. I first became involved with this project through my agent, Robbie Lance, in New York. And Robbie Lance got a call from a fellow named Robert Sterling and said, we have a book called Winter Kills, and we'd love to get Milos Forman to direct it. And so Robbie said, well, Milos is not available, but if you like somebody else, you should get Bill Richert, you know? And I got a hold of the book. They sent me the book, and I was sure I wasn't going to do this movie because the book was sprawling and complicated and theory upon theory about the president, but how to make all that work in a way that would be palatable to people so that they can watch it without being a litany of accusations and conspiracy theories.
I shot President Keegan.
And in the end, I said, okay, I'll do this, but I got to do it as a comedy because there's no way to approach this tragedy. Maybe I would do the whole book just like a kind of political Alice in Wonderland. Here would be this innocent kid who was protected at some level by his family, by his wealth, by his education, by his friends, in a womb-like world. And all around him are these terrifying experiences. And then slowly these illusions fall from his eyes, you know, the scales of these illusions, which have fallen from the eyes of our whole country. People got actually scared when they read the screenplay. And that's why when Jeff got involved and the other actors got involved, there was something courageous about all of them to participate in this project. Of course, I'd seen Jeff in The Last Picture Show, and then just before we were shooting, Rancho Deluxe came out. I thought, this guy is he's gonna be a star, man. He just was all over him, you know.
I've always been attracted to unusual projects, you know, projects that I would like to see in the audience. I love going to movies, and I always like to be surprised. And Winter Kills was a movie like that, where I didn't know what was going to happen next. And plus, it was based on something that really happened, and it had a lot of spin to it.
He was with ICM. His agent was Jack Gilardi. They were grooming him for a star. They didn't know who this kid was, which was meaning me, who had only directed documentaries. So I had meetings with Jack. He agreed that the part was good, but he didn't know whether his actor should be in this picture, right?
That I really owe getting the gig to one of my oldest friends, David Greenwald, who was an old high school buddy, and in the early part of my career was also my stand-in.
Later on, I put him in the movie. You can see him in the movie. Anyway, I met David at a party and started telling him about the project. And I said, oh, well, you got to tell him how it's going to be. And plus, you know, I'm living near Jeff. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And so, because one of the things I did is I rented an apartment in Malibu to say that I was near Jeff so he could just stop, which is, I can't believe I did this stuff now that I think about it.
And I had just finished, or was it maybe I was in the midst of doing the remake of King Kong. And Bill pitched me this movie Winter Kills, and he said, "This can be your Kong. You'll be Kong. It'll be like your Kong when you do this movie."
Well, then we went from my apartment and we went to a coffee shop on PCH. And so we were going to look through the screenplay. So we started reading the screenplay. And we come to the part where John Huston says,
"What do you think these girls are doing under this blanket, son?
I don't know, Pop.
Think they're playing with my nuts?"
and I'm reading this, and Jeff is laughing. And then all of a sudden we realized that the whole restaurant was laughing. And then some people started to applaud. And I said, "See, Jeff, that's only the beginning, man. If they're clapping in the coffee shop, they'll be clapping in the theaters."
And of course, another thing that attracted me was this cast that Bill was going to assemble. And you know, at first when he told me his idea, I said, "Oh yeah, well that's great. You know, good luck. You're a first-time director, and fine." And
Paul Kohner, who was John Huston's agent, wanted nothing to do with it. So there was a woman in the agency named Maggie Abbott, and she thought it was wonderful. She said, "It doesn't matter what they say. I'm sending it to John. He should read it." And so John read it, and apparently Huston had the same opinions of Joseph Kennedy that Richard Condon did. Word came back that John loved the script. He would love to be part of it. So I went down, and I met with him first time in San Diego in a hotel suite where he was shooting a movie. And all I remember is that when I walked in, I said, "How you doing? This is John." And John just stood up with a growl. "How do you do, Mr. Richert? It's very nice to meet you. And I enjoyed your screenplay very much." I said, "Oh, geez, thanks, John. You know, from you, that's wonderful." And he said, "Oh, it's a piece of work." He said, "And I knew some of the players, so I think we could have a very good time with this. It could be a very fine project."
And then he would come by and he said, "John Huston said yes. We've got John Huston." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, no." A couple of days would pass and he goes, "Well, Elizabeth Taylor's on." I said, "Come on." To Shert Bufuni. He said yes. I couldn't believe it.
And sooner or later, I guess he agreed to do it because he did it.
When you think about it, for a first film, for a guy to assemble the cast that was in Winter Kills was phenomenal.
The first time I met Elizabeth Taylor was at the Beverly Hills Hotel. She was at one of the front rooms at one of the suites, and we move around the corner, and there is, in this room, is her husband, the Secretary of the Navy, John Warner, who's reading a newspaper. And she says, "Don't mind John," she said. He's not going to pay any attention to this conversation. He's just reading the paper." So here's John Warner, the Secretary of the Navy, reading the paper, and here's Elizabeth Taylor sitting in front of me and said, "So how do you see this character, and how do you see the movie?" And I said, "Well, you know, she's a mob lady, and she's kind of a pimp for the president." She said, "Oh, what a hoot." What a hoot. She said, "It really is a great mystery, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah." And John said, "It's probably true." And he lifted up the paper like that. I wanted to cast movie icons for each of these roles. If I could get the icon of each one of these characters so that the minute you see him, you know who he is. The minute you see Ralph Meeker, you know, he's a great B-movie, tough guy, detective, right? Handsome. Women loved him. But now here he is. He's a little bit older, and he's perfect for the role.
How you been, Game Boy?
Older and fatter, uglier. Like you.
I'd seen Eli Wallach in the Sergio Leone pictures and thought he'd be great as a gay cop. And I'd always loved watching Sterling Hayden. He was so powerful and larger than life.
Hell, you know, if your old man didn't own him already, I might have bought him myself. Except for his snotty personality.
I wanted the best crew I could get, too. Veterans. I wanted to work with the oldest and most experienced men that I could find so I could learn from them.
That was a real coup on Bill's part to get a master cinematographer like Vilmos Zsigmond.
He was fun to work with because he really loved films, and he loved the idea that he got me to shoot the movie. And you know, he had such a charming character that he could get to the movie anybody he wanted, you know, basically.
Wow, Vilmos. He was fast, and yet at the same time gave you this lighting that was staggering, you know, and knew how to do both.
I wanted to have all the colors in the movie to be really, really rich and a little bit mysterious, you know, where only certain things are lit, and there's a lot of shadows, and there's a lot of character. And so, as I was describing that to him, he said, Rembrandt, you want it to be like Rembrandt.
You know, we had some interesting effects, you know, with Bob Boyle, who is a great production designer of all times in Hollywood.
Oh, Vilmos and I have had a long history of working on several films. Again, I have to go back to this one and say this is the most delightful.
He's an incredible designer, you know, who would do something out of nothing, you know, with not much money, and it would just look great, you know.
Bob was, in a sense, a teacher that sometimes said I was teaching him. He was Hitchcock's production designer.
We entered the project with the sense that the sky was the limit. We had no limitations. And everybody approached every problem that way.
Anything I said to him, he would try, you know. And whatever I would envision, he would come up with. There was never a sense of, with Mr. Boyle, of any form of limits. I'm not talking budgetary. It was just, if you can think it, you can do it. You know, in the sense I described something before I would finish, he would have it. He would know what I want, and I would show up, and there it would be.
This is the contract silo, Nick. Contracts, contracts, contracts. Agreements kept, agreements broken. Papers, papers, papers.
The original budget of the film was around $6.5 million, which in those days was not a little amount. We have 5 or 6 of the biggest sound stages at MGM, so it was very spectacular.
We've already taken care of the first one. You make the second hit. A kid named Willie Arnold.
And who's the first?
President Keegan.
The first scene we shot on the movie was the one with Ralph Meeker and Eli Wallach. That was on the first time I'd ever been actually on sets, on a soundstage, practically.
Bill came to me and saw this contrast viewing glass on my neck. He said, "What does that do?" I said, "Well, you know, I judge contrast, I judge the lighting with that. And, oh, can I see that?" So I gave it to him.
And I remember looking around and everything was totally dark. I didn't know that that's supposed to be that way. That shows the highlights of the film, right?
Looked through it and said, "But wow, this is too dark. Is this going to look that dark?"
Yeah, and finally I said, "Vilmos," I said, if you're shooting it all this dark, nobody's going to see it. He said, "What?" I said, "Look how dark it is." He said, "Oh!" He's like, "Oh!" He said, "No."
It's not a tool for you. It's a tool for me. So please, look to the camera. That's what's going to be on the screen.
So they put me on this big Panavision camera, and they had the thing, and I guess I didn't want anybody to know just how little I knew. I'd never looked through a 35-millimeter camera before, right? So now here I am, and you had these wheels, like you've seen all the wheels on the camera, right? So now here I am doing like this. Well, I turned the wheels, and I spun the whole thing, so now it threw me right off.
Oh, my God.
And everybody looked at Bill, so, oh! Vilmos laughs, because Vilmos had a great laugh. I'm sure he still does, right? He's, oh!
So that was quite a day, actually.
I don't think I've ever been on a film in which everyone, from cast and crew, had such an emotional investment in the project.
So everyone was having really an amazing experience on this film. It was a great energy on the set.
They were all so supportive of Bill and what we were doing, and we're having so much fun.
Bill was a kind of a binding force. There were a lot of other people we weren't sure of, but we were sure of Bill.
And I remember he loved to make the movie, you know. After each shot, you know, said, "Wow, this was great," you know.
His door was open to everybody, and he listened to everybody. He didn't take everybody's thoughts, but he listened to everybody.
Everyone from the guy working at craft services to, you know, the grips would be saying, "Bill, you know, in this scene, like what if," and Bill would go, "That's great."
Everybody was working day and night on the project, and days and nights kind of all melded into one. I loved working with Vilmos because we could always argue about things.
Oh, Bob is great because he's, you know, you could never get into a fight with him.
As a matter of fact, it seems to me that most of the time I was arguing with Vilmos all the time.
And I would say, "That's great, Bob." And Vilmos said, "It'd be shit to do that. That would be shit. Do you want to do shit?" And Bob Boy would laugh, and Vilmos is just, and so here were these two guys about to say, both of them at the top of their form, and I'm trying to figure out this and that. I don't remember what the exact thing was, but I remember Vilmos kept saying, "Oh, you do that? Oh, that'd be shit."
Come on, boy. Wake up. Gotta get our ass in gear.
Working with John Huston was a big highlight for me. I had worked with him before as a director in Fat City, and that was one of my first films. And I remember being sort of jealous of John's relationship with Stacy Keach, who was also in that film, because he was very, friendly with Stacy. And I think, looking back on it, I think it was kind of a directorial choice to keep me, this young kid, on his heels, and I'm not sure what was happening, but he didn't really engage with me on a friendship kind of level. The opposite was true on Winter Kills. Remember the first day, and he came up to me and said, "Jeff, how are you doing? Come on, let's play some backgammon." And he was so friendly, and he went out of his way, I think, almost as an example for all the other actors, to show us the proper way an actor should behave towards a director.
Once John agreed to be an actor, John became an actor in the film. He almost never intruded any of his opinions or ideas about direction or anything else.
And the respect that he gave Bill, Richert, was quite remarkable, for this old veteran, to be asking this first-time director, who's never directed a film before, "Anything else, Bill? What can I do? Is this what you wanted?"
I remember when Elizabeth Taylor came, and somebody said, "Now, this is the first time she's been back at this studio since National Velvet," they said, right? And there came Elizabeth and her hairdresser and her agent and her friends, and like a little caravan with a little car behind them.
She's amazing. She's a grande dame, she's just large, big personality, generous, ballsy, outspoken, funny, irreverent woman. It was, it was quite something working with her.
I was so happy to work with Elizabeth Taylor because I admired her work so much, and I thought that she was so beautiful. And she showed up actually, and I was actually so depressed to see her in real life at that time. She was overweight and she didn't look good at all. And I said, my God, what I'm going to do with this famous star, to make her look good. And I immediately called up Benavision. I said, I remember you guys saying at one time that you had actually a lens which reduces the width of the picture. Everybody can look thinner than actually they are. They had to search for that lens for like a week. And finally they found it and sent it to me. But the dailies looked so terrific. She looked like when she was glamorous, like 5 years ago or something like that. And the laboratory people who worked with me said, "What did you do to her? She looks so great. I mean, we saw a picture of her last week, and she didn't look like great." And I told them, I said, "Oh my God, you devil!" And they actually called me from that time. They called me Dr. Zygmunt.
Toshiro Mifune was actually the suggestion of Ross Brown, who was the casting director, when we were going through the whole list of people, and he was saying, I said, "Oh, do you think we can get Toshiro Mifune?"
To be working with him was so terrific,
All right, Keith. It's the same. Always the same.
He was playing my houseboy, the guy who was my servant and my waiter. And he did it with such dignity. He was like having a king for a houseboy. Couldn't speak any English at the time, or very, very little. And he learned all his lines phonetically. So he gave a rather, peculiar line readings.
Actually, that's not something I would say.
But he was wonderful to work with.
They will run you dizzy. They will pile falsehood on top of falsehood until you can't tell a lie from the truth, and you won't even want to.
Ah, God, Richard Boone, he was Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel. I mean, as an actor, he's always stood out. I can't think of anyone who has that style of acting or his delivery of lines.
They're still dredging from my body, and I've still got it.
Now, God bless him and rest in peace, but Richard Boone was drunk, almost falling down drunk 99% of the time. And what was the amazing thing about Boone was how well he functioned, at such high octane all the time.
I also worked on a film that he was on, The Shootist, in which he was smashed all the time. But he still seemed to be able to turn in a performance.
He's kind of a one-of-a-kind fella, and he was just great, great to be in a film with him.
Belinda Bauer was a top model with the Zoli Agency in New York. I wrote the part of Yvette Malone specifically for her.
I'd been studying acting, but it was my first film. So it was pretty amazing first film on every level. Coming to work and having a dressing room at MGM with a star on the door, that was like, wow, really. That was a dream come true. Yeah.
Where are you?
Grand Central. I'm on my way over, okay?
I can't wait.
I love you.
Then come and get me.
That was the first scene that I shot in my first movie. So that was an interesting experience.
The only time I can remember, as I sit here now, that I had to do a love scene with the girlfriend of the director, watching right there and directing.
As it happened while I was working with her in the part, and slowly we became romantically involved.
Also, I have to say, as an actress, to be directed by a man that you're romantically involved with, it was really pretty extraordinary.
Kind of a weird, you know, uncomfortable, kinky, weird feeling.
In the script, I was having the world's loudest orgasm.
So I had mixed feelings about that. Fortunately, Jeff was always a pro, and he's not the kind of guy like my own jealous head, right?
Why won't you marry me?
You hardly know me.
We see each other. I talk to you all the time.
You talk to my machine.
It's all pleasure for a director to work with Jeff. He's really smart. He understands the character. He understands you.
He's a very generous actor. Yeah, he's a very, very generous actor.
Wonderful person, working very hard. He's always contributing so much to every film that he does.
There was no movie star illusions about him or frivolous stuff. It wasn't until about the 11th week of shooting that we learned the picture was in trouble.
I was during the scene we were shooting the climax of the film with Anthony Perkins high in the catwalks of the soundstage. He played a mastermind who was in charge of all of this intrigue that was going on. And he had kidnapped my girlfriend.
I want to find Yvette Malone.
And so I was, filled with, passion to find my girlfriend and all psyched up. And I come in with my blackjack and I say,
You give me this information, or I'm going to get it the old-fashioned way.
And I grab his arm. I said, tell me where my girlfriend is. He didn't say anything. And I took this thing and with all my strength, I cracked him on the arm.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, you clown? You broken my arm.
Saw his face. My first reaction was, wow, what a wonderful reaction. What a great actor. And then I could see that, no, he was really in pain, and he fell to his knees. And he said, my arm.
On his arm was just hanging down. He could barely move it.
And I said, gee, I thought this thing was fake, But I guess it was like being beaten by a rubber hose,
But he said, oh, no, this is all right. He loved it. He got... it was like, it was really happening. It was all really happening. So we were about to do another take, and all of a sudden, I turned, and I noticed that the lights were flickering on the big sets. I said, wait a minute, what's going on? And Vilmos, who apparently knew a little bit more than I do about the production problem, said, I will keep shooting until nothing is lit. Nothing is lit. I will keep shooting till all the lights go out, and the lights went out.
And all of a sudden, this strange light starts kind of spilling into the scene.
We were all standing on this set, way up.
And then we look over, and it's like something, it reminded me of a scene from On the Waterfront or something. The big stage doors open up, and here come these union guys in with the big coats and hats, and they say, get down off there. Yeah, you, get down.
All right, nobody works. This movie's shut down.
You're shut down. Nobody works. You're shut down. Hey, everybody, stop. You're shut. Nobody works. I said, what's going on?
And their objection was that we weren't being paid. Well, we had let a few paydays slip by, I guess.
And they just closed us down.
I think first time in film history a movie has filed bankruptcy.
We all went home. We were very sorry about it, and we were wondering what's going to happen to this movie.
And it was heartbreaking, because we put all that work, this great cast, and the movie was shut down. Forever, as far as everyone knew.
Nobody knew what to do, and agents were called. I mean, everybody was upset because everybody had an interest in seeing the movie done.
To see Bill, who was usually so happy, he was just depressed, and it was, terrible, and it was really knocked the wind out of all of us.
As I said, we were shooting on five sound stages at MGM, and we weren't paying for all of those things. In the end, there was no money to pay for them. And so later on, when I found out, I said, what made Lenny think that these studios would just forget about it all? And then, but the idea was that Lenny figured that if enough people were owed enough money, they'd have to finish the movie. But this had never happened before. There was never anybody like Lenny Goldberg before who actually thought that he could pull this off.
What you say is true, Nick. It's going to shake up a lot of people. President, Congress, everyone.
Especially Pa.
And then somehow we got it back together again, enough to go to Philadelphia, probably because we couldn't shoot anymore in the studios.
And we shot a whole week there for no money.
There was an entire film crew working for no money, simply because they really were believing in the film.
And we didn't really care what the union is going to say about it. You know, they get penalized, they can do anything they want to do. But we stayed with the picture.
We got about halfway through in Philadelphia, and again, there was a question of money. And the IATSE boys said, well, you have to get it, and get it on such and such a date, or we do close it down. And you got the sense that they would do more than close it down.
And that's where one of the crew guys who hadn't been paid caught up with John Stark, our production manager. He came with a shot-off shotgun and put it in John's neck until John came up with the cash for his generator. He said, you son of a bitch, you're going to pay. He found us in Philadelphia.
At the end of the week, they said, okay, guys, now you come up to room, I don't know, 1717, whatever. You go up and you get paid.
So I knock on this door, and I go in, and it's a nice suite. And there's a young woman there, half undressed. She had a trench coat, which she had just taken off. There was money in the inside pockets of the trench coat.
Dollar bills, $10 bills, $50 bills.
She had an open briefcase on the bed with money in it, and she was taking money out of her brassiere. And that's how I got paid.
So where that money came from, I have no idea. Nobody ever answered me. I don't know.
We had about a week, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks of very important scenes to shoot, and we're just coming to the home stretch of our film.
And by that time, I knew that we were, you know, we were $4 million in debt. Then the third major shutdown occurred. I remember walking on the set, and I had to open the door and see this whole crew out there, and they were just all, it was such a, you know, they were really kind of, it's depressing to get a bounce check anyway. But for the third time in a row, there were like 400 creditors, the wig makers and the drivers and the gasoline and all those debts somehow that had accumulated. I don't know how we did. By that time, when you know, the producers were in New York and were not really available, by that time I think they were sort of hiding out. Then we found out somebody shot and killed Lenny Goldberg, somebody he owed money to. They blew his brains out. They handcuffed him to his bed. That really shook us all up.
Well, we didn't know how we are going to finish this movie.
So many times that it looked like we'd never finish it.
And then about a month later, the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Bill, and he says, I've got an idea. I said, what, Bill? He says, well, I've got an idea that we can go to Germany, and we're going to make another film. It's called American Success Company. I've written it. It's a brilliant script. It's going to fund the making of Winter Kills. So, to make a long story short, we went to Germany, made this wacky movie called American Success. The movie came out. I don't know if it was a tremendous success or not, but somehow it raised enough money to finish Winter Kills.
They got the film out of bankruptcy.
So it turned out just as Bill said it would.
It was amazing. Contacting the same crew was easy. They all wanted to finish it.
The whole company had become your family.
So they were there with their heart. You know, they were caught in the passion and the love of filmmaking.
Vilmos was not able to come back. It was only because he was shooting another movie, so we had another guy, who was John Bailey, which wasn't bad either.
John Bailey was available when I was not available. He knew the picture because he was my operator all the way through through Winter Kills. And so it was a good choice, actually, to have him go and finish the picture for Bill.
So After a 2-year hiatus, we all got back together to shoot the Oklahoma sequences in Northern California, the scenes with Sterling Hayden. We got there on that morning, and the sky was just bright blue. And I was walking, as directors, you know, with my coffee and walking around, just checking everything out. And there I looked up, and then there on this hill was Sterling marching. And I remember just turning away from Sterling and looking right over here, and there was this cloud that was coming like fog. So now suddenly we're in these tents that were being put up, and people were drinking coffee, and we were just huddled together, this entire crew. And Sterling was stuck in his trailer because the rain was coming so down, and it was mud. So I stepped out, and there I was. From my safety of this little place, we were all standing, and now I'm in the mud. And then I walked up where I'd just seen Sterling Hayden a few hours before, and I walked up this mountain, and the rain was pouring. This is a true story. The rain's pouring right down, and I got to the top, and I said, "You son of a bitch! You can't do this to me!" I said, "I've been waiting 2 years for this shot." I said, I got a crew here. I got tanks I'm never going to get again. We're never going to get the money again, and you just can't do this to me. God damn it. So I went back down, and I stood back, and I said, "Mr. Bailey," I said, "get everybody ready to shoot." I said, in an hour, we're going to have that shot. And I was just, you know, what else are you going to do? Stand around? But within like 20, 30 minutes, all of a sudden, the sky started to open up. And then the light started to come through. And it was almost sunlight. And everybody was ready. And then we got the tanks, and the car came. We got Jeff, and he got out of the car. We did the scene, and then the whole thing closed up again. And it rained for 3 days. Even though we were back on our feet again, money was still tight. We had to cut some scenes and simplify a lot of others. Finally, it came time to shoot the climax. And that was really the only time John Huston gave me advice as a director.
God, son, it must have been the milkman after all, because you sure as hell ain't no part of me.
We were running out of time, and I was trying to choreograph a gunfight, and I wasn't quite sure how to make it work. And John said, "Well, what if you did this, Bill?" And within a flash, this guy who was so old went, "Come over, show me this." And Boone comes over here, takes the gun like this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And they said, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, that's great." And he went back, and there he was back in character. He was Paul, once again.
Bill, there the next one's up.
Then one day it was all done.
You know, thank God we finished the whole thing.
There were a few things we'd like to have finished better, but it did get finished.
Once it was done, there were a lot of people who understood, and a lot of people who didn't understand it, too.
When the film opened in New York, and there were lines to see the film, it was very well received.
And then all of a sudden, this incredible review came out from Vincent Canby, and then at the New York Times, and then all of a sudden these other reviews from the biggest critics. I mean, the New Yorker gave it such a rave review. The critic, Brendan Gills, came. He said, I wasn't sure I understood it the first time. I just remember reading it. He said, so I went back in and I saw the movie all over again. And he said, it was like listening to some marvelous, entertaining, drunken storyteller, which is probably, except, you know. But the guys from AFCO Embassy said, they're coming out of the theaters in the West Coast and they're telling people not to go in. It's not really in the best interest of Americans to watch a picture like this. When the people came out, they were incensed that some American filmmaker had defamed and slandered the President of the United States. And this French woman spit on me. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, wow.
I probably would have negative feedback on the picture because, you know, it is pretty controversial. If anybody saw it, I don't think anybody saw the picture, or maybe 10 people. I don't know.
And then suddenly it was gone. It was pulled from all the theaters.
It was like, oh no, here we go again. What is going on? What's going on here?
Maybe it had such a short run because of its political nature. I'm not sure.
Actually, Richard Condon wrote an article for Harper's Magazine called "Who Killed Winter Kills?" And the summation of that article was that AFCO Embassy had major defense contracts, and that Kennedy somehow were involved in those contracts or their business dealings, and Ted Kennedy was going to run for president during that time, and so they didn't want that movie around, and it wasn't around. It was abruptly pulled out. So once you start thinking conspiracy and connections, they're everywhere.
Just the fact that it almost died and we completed it, that was the big high for this one. But it is kind of disappointing, when you put a lot of work into a project, and all that time, all that money, all that creative energy, and it comes out for maybe a one weekend.
Oh, I was so disappointed. I was disappointed for myself. I was disappointed for Bill, as you know, who had worked so hard. It was incredibly disappointing.
We all want to work on successful films, mostly because films are made to be seen. And if no one sees it, then part of your reason to be is gone.
And it was really a picture which we thought it's going to be very successful. And it was like a bomb, you know.
Well, the DVD release will get a whole other generation to look at the picture.
That's one of the good things about DVDs and videotapes, is that people can see movies that people put such hard work into.
It was a good film. It was a smart, unusual, witty.
The story was so intriguing and, you know, kind of interwove facts and fiction and all kinds of kind of surreal elements.
Even today, I've seen it so many times, but even today as I look at it, it's always kind of surprising.
I think there are very interesting things in the movie, and it's certainly it's a great film for the first director.
Winter Kills was way before its time when it was released, in terms of what it was talking about.
I have a movie that was moving around in time looking for a theater and the right audience, and now maybe it exists. In a sense, this generation is closer to the way I was then, because the absurdity that we all live with now, and it's everywhere. When I wrote the screenplay, it was a literal world. The president was a good guy. The vice president was also a good guy. And everything they said was as true as they could say it, one thought. And now you wonder what really is behind almost everything. And you know that behind every curtain is somebody that you never expected to meet. Because there really is never anything as simple as, you know, the original reason or the right reason or what actually happened. There's always layers and layers and layers. And those layers are in the movie.